The views and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media is strictly prohibited.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society. I'm Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my guest, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. Today, our panel will be once again answering questions from our listeners.
Thank you, listeners.
I did want to ask, what did you think about Vice President Harris's not pushing back as much with the untruths, like where Trump was saying, well, she's a terrible deal maker. She, made a deal with Putin and Zelensky and this and that when she wasn't there, and some of these other points where she would say, well, that's not true. But the only time she really pushed back with Trump was where he said, she wants to take your guns away. And she just said, stop with that nonsense. Tim and I are both gun owners. I thought that was great. I mean, it was quick, it was sharp, and it was clear. Put Trump in his place. And I would have liked to have seen more of that. So do you think that she might have done more of that?
No.
I think her face did the work. Did you listen to it or did you watch it? I mean, if you were watching it, her face was speaking volumes last night.
I watched. I would have liked to have heard her vocalize more, I thought.
I think she did really well with the facial expressions. A lot of times, of course, we did watch the debate. And here in the South, there is a saying, well, bless your heart. And it can mean two things. Number one, it could mean, well, I'm really sorry for you. But it can also mean, depending on how you say it, how did you possibly survive being as stupid as you are? And the looks that she was giving were the bless your heart. I said before the debate, do not swing at pitches in the dirt. Saying that you met with Putin, that's checkable. She never met with Putin. That can be checked. Whether or not she wants to take away your guns, that can't be checked. But to say, hey, we own guns, we don't want to take them away. Again, it's a matter of that was something that you can't go on to get a fact check on. But saying, oh, well, you met with Putin and you had a terrible deal and you did this, that, and the other, that's easy to check. Did she go to Russia? He said she went to Russia. She met with Putin. She never did that. So why swing at the pitch in the dirt?
And to your point, when the moderators asked Trump, can you answer the question about healthcare? What did he say? He said, I have a concept of a plan, which would have been the line of the night if it wasn't for the pets thing, right? Because it sounded an awful lot like Rudy Giuliani saying, we have lots of theories, we just don't have evidence. And this was, I don't actually have a plan, but I have a concept of a plan. Well, it's been 8 years, dude. At some point, if you get enough money, can you turn the concept into a notion, and maybe then from there into an idea, and then maybe even a plan? Bad debate, Trumpy.
Yep, bad, very bad.
What does the panel see as the high and the low points for each candidate during the debate? And do you believe there will be a second debate?
Mark, Trump has said this morning that he's not debating again. I don't know if he's holding to that, but even if it was on Fox, he would not debate again because he says he won.
Yeah. Alternate reality. I don't think there will be a second debate. I'm rather surprised that the Harris campaign wants another debate. I mean, you wipe the floor with them. Why do it? When Trump beat Biden in the first debate, Trump wasn't all in to do another one. You've done your job. Mission accomplished. It was Biden that wanted to do the debate again. Trump was kind of thrown into this because now it's a new candidate. I could see the Harris campaign saying, hey, listen, we've done all we can do. We wiped the floor with them. This was such a pathetic performance. Why do it again and give him another chance maybe to make a comeback? But I could see the Trump people saying, hey, listen, we need to patch a hole in this sinking ship. But as Scott said, Trump said, no, he doesn't want to do it. Low point for each candidate. Low point for Kamala Harris was the first question. She didn't answer it. She basically just did not answer the first question. And I think that was the low point for her. There was no other low points in my mind. Her answers were crisp. Her facial expressions, if you were watching it on television, were absolutely amazing. The biggest high point that I really think for Kamala Harris was when she went over and walked right over to Trump in the beginning, got into his space, and he didn't know what to do. You could see he was taken aback by this 5'4" woman coming right up, putting her hand out, and he was kind of like, oh, do I take it? What do I do here? That was a high point. That was a true power move and showed how weak Trump was. Trump's low point, people eating dogs and cats. I'm sorry. That's, again, another high point for Harris. When he said it, the look on her face was like, what are you talking about? That to me was his low point. Although it was a debate full of low points for Donald Trump, who rambled incoherently from this topic to another topic. He couldn't stay on a single topic. It was an hour and a half of just low points for Trump. I can't really think of a single high point he had, because when he had an opportunity to have a high point, she basically just slammed it down. Every trap she laid, he fell into. That's a masterclass in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I wouldn't have expected necessarily Kamala to come out on top on the Afghanistan withdrawal, but somehow Trump managed to blow that one too by talking about Abdul. And that was a little crazy. So yeah, I don't I don't know what they'll look. Look, I can answer the fracking question for her if you want me to. I mean, the world is a different place now than it was. Our thinking has definitely changed because the oil situation in the world, the energy situation in the world, has been changed by Vladimir Putin. That was not the case in 2020 when she was running for president and came out, against fracking. At that point, fracking companies were operating at a loss. There was no profit to be made for them. And but not only was there no profit, their equipment expenditures and things were having them operate at a loss. We had a glut of oil at that point. I think this week we've had a shortage of oil globally and energy globally. And fracking was a huge part of the Biden administration stepping in and making up for the global oil situation, right? Because oil is a globally traded commodity. We cannot by ourselves lower the price of oil to the point that we probably would like to and keep our oil industry going. Right? The two things have to be somewhat in balance. And the balance was simply not there in 2020. The situation now is that there's a deficit of oil throughout the world. We filled that gap with fracking. And I'll give you another one too, as a bonus. Fracking technology has been proven to work with geothermal energy, which is a clean, renewable source of energy. So the application of that same technology is potentially the way of the future. And that is a result of an initiative that Barack Obama started that took a really long time to develop, but now has been boosted by the Inflation Reduction Act by the Biden administration, and looks like it actually can be a moneymaker and a winner in the renewable energy market. That's not the most articulate I've ever been about it, but I think that her campaign might want to look into that kind of answer for this going forward. And I think, Mark, that she does want to debate again because I think she's better at this than people thought.
Yes.
And I think that, she probably needs to now go out and do a lot of interviews, be brimming with confidence as answering questions from people, or at least getting to her message that she wants to deliver out there. And hopefully she's got people who are good media coordinators out there to help her with that. It's kind of a tricky thing to do, to acknowledge a question, begin framing an answer, and as quickly as you can bridge to your message that you want to get out there is not an easy thing to do, but it is something that can be learned and can be done. There are politicians who are masters at it, so she could certainly learn to do that if she hasn't already.
I agree with that. One of the things that he said that might have been a high point was, well, you've had 3.5 years to do this. Why have you not done anything? And I go back to history. The vice president does not have the power to do this. The president makes the decisions. Although she did not want to throw Joe Biden under the bus, like Trump threw J.D. Vance under the bus when it came to the abortion question, at some point in time, that's going to have to happen. She's going to have to say, listen, I'm the vice president. I'm not the last word on any of this stuff. I don't make, I can help shape policy, but the buck stops at the Resolute desk, and I don't sit behind it now. And I think that's an important point that needs to be made, that the vice president is limited in their power. They can advise, but at the end of the day, they have to consent to what the top of the ticket wants to do. And I think that's something that it's okay to admit some mistakes. I think Chris Christie said that when in his assessment. It's okay to say, hey, this might have been a mistake. We learn from our mistakes, and we won't do that again. So I think that's another important thing.
To offer an alternative opinion on that, if we're talking about the tariff situation where Trump said, you've had 3.5 years to take these tariffs off, I think the better answer than, it's not my call, is to say, look, we'll take these tariffs off when China earns it. And China has done nothing to earn our taking these tariffs off. I think there's a big part of what Joe Biden was trying to do in his presidency that had to do with some measure of continuity. Trump came into office and immediately reversed everything that he could that Obama had done. Biden was a little bit more circumspect about it. He reversed some of the things that Trump had done that he felt were particularly egregious, but he kept other things on and going, because I don't think we want to send the message to the world that democracy is chaos and that it's going to swing wildly back and forth every 4 years. And so Kamala Harris is going to come in, hopefully, as a 2-term president. Hopefully she'll be good enough to earn that second term, should she win the first term. And that will break, a streak of 2 presidencies in a row that are 4 years. While I think that 3 terms is too many, I think that 1 term is almost not enough, because it takes 3 years to move the American economy around. It's not something that turns on a dime. And, Trump got caught yesterday talking about inflation, that we had no inflation during his administration. The economic situation that he had coming into office was much better than the one that he left behind. And it took 3 years for him to really blow it. I think if you look at GDP growth, first year it was lower, second year it was high, third year it was lower. So there was an arc there. By the numbers, I think it was 2.4% in 2017, 2.9%, I think it was in 2018. Somebody will have to check these numbers. And then back to 2.7, I think, in 2019. So there was a bit of a bump there that began to go down. In 2019, the economy was already beginning to slow down. We've also seen in the Biden administration that there were a lot of things that were happening that were hangovers from the Trump years, right? So inflation being one of them. There are a number of different reasons for inflation, but one of them, without a doubt, is that the tariffs caused inflation, a lagging indicator, to be sure, right? Importers were paying a lot more money. And I know this because a friend of mine sells luggage for a living. The luggage is all made in China. And he would buy or rent a big shipping container, fill it with luggage over in China. It would come to the West Coast. It would be offloaded and sent to stores around the country. In 2021, I believe it was, the shipping container had gone up from $5,000 a container to $20,000 a container, and his Christmas order did not arrive until April of that year. So it was so late that he missed Christmas season, and basically I think his company went out of business. He's not doing that job anymore. So there is a lag in the economy. And I was listening to during the RNC. Jody Arrington is a representative from Texas, and he was asked by Julie Mason on Sirius Radio, why did you sign off on these tariffs? Republicans have long been against protectionism. Protectionism is the kind of thing that Bernie Sanders wants to do, right? That was never a Republican thing. My Republican friends were all free market traders and let the market decide. Arrington said, look, we made a conscious decision that we were going to end the era of cheap goods from China because of the other things that China was doing with intellectual property and subsidizing industries by the government. And their response was tariffs. Putting tariffs on Chinese goods would increase the price of those goods for importers, who would eventually have to turn around and pass that pain on to consumers, which happened, but it didn't happen in 2019, it happened in 2021, mostly because the pandemic got in the way, right? So it happened in 2021. So you can look at inflation. There are a number of causes, right? But one of the big causes is we didn't get those goods. We had shortages of things like toilet paper, right? We had shortages of things like baby formula, which had different causes, but was very much a supply chain issue, very much a market consolidation issue. We're getting past that now. It's taken some time, but 3.5 years, inflation is down. It went down to 2.5% today. This is what a soft landing looks like. This is success on Bidenomics, or success on the Fed if you prefer to give the Fed the credit. One way or another, inflation is over. Prices are still high, okay? But prices are measured year to year. And in 2020, the price of everything was cheap because nobody was buying anything. So prices went way up from there. And they're coming down. But we no longer have the benefit of tons of products coming in from China cheaply because they're all being tariffed. If Joe Biden or Kamala Harris is being honest about it, they will say, look, we'll take those tariffs off when China earns it, but China hasn't earned it yet. And I don't think that that's bad policy.
I agree. So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium offering social issue solutions to NGOs and international government agencies through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Podkite, who does all our analytics, iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source of music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all these and other quality platforms mentioned in our description. We'd like to thank our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, a question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershworth, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.